Okay, thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Melanie Casciato, and I'm with Columbia Basin College. Um, a little bummed that we're doing this via webinar because usually my colleague Catalina Yepes and I come to Connell for the evening and get to join you and your families to talk about financial aid. So tonight we're doing it webinar style. Webinars are a little different than doing it via like a Zoom meeting, in that you will not necessarily have microphone or camera access, but you are able to send your messages through to the chat. So feel free to send messages to the chat. If you have a complicated question, we're happy to sidebar with you as well. We are recording tonight's presentation so that we make sure that it is available for anyone who's not able to be here tonight, or for questions to get answered later. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into financial aid. And so I am going to share my screen, and we're going to go ahead and do a PowerPoint. So paying for college, this is why we are here this evening. And one of the things that I like to express is that, my title is Director for Student Recruitment, but my background is in financial aid. And my emphasis for tonight is to just talk about the different types of financial aid and make it so that you hopefully get your questions answered. If this is the first student going to college out of the family, that we're able to help you through the process a little bit and give you a few things to mark down on your calendar to keep an eye out for, because I know your senior year gets busy. So one of the first reasons we talk about financial aid is because it is expensive to go to college. And we want to make sure that as you are thinking about what your future college options are, that you are also aware of what that looks like in price point. So you have lots of options in the state of Washington. You can attend a private university. That would be like going to Gonzaga. You can attend a public university, one of our state schools. There are community colleges, technical and trade schools. All of those are different options for you. Oops, I'm going to go back real fast. When we look at the cost of going to college, private universities can be anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 per year. Public universities, our state schools, can be anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 a year. And community colleges are typically in the realm of about $10,000 to $15,000 per year. And if you look at this, the tuition at CBC, tuition is what you pay to sit in that classroom and take the classes. So for a full-time student, it's about $5,100 per year. We emphasize that because if you are able to go to college and live at home, that is your most affordable path to college, because then you're not paying additional expenses for living and transportation and everything else. So we're excited to be able to offer an affordable tuition rate to our surrounding communities in the Tri-Cities. So when we talk about financial aid, we like to talk about what the different types of financial aid are. Financial aid consists of a variety of forms. So I've put these in order of what I think are the most attractive types of aid, or the types of money you should be looking for as a senior, to the less attractive types of aid that maybe you would use if you had to get your dream job. The first one on the list is scholarships, and scholarships are typically separate applications. Everything else as we go down this list is going to be applied for through your financial aid application. But scholarships are really something separate. There will be local, state, national scholarship applications. You'll have criteria that you may have to meet, and you will submit an application for each of those awards. Grants are the start of the types of financial aid that we talk about in terms of when you file for your financial aid application. Grants are free money, or we call it gift aid. Somebody is giving you this money to put toward your educational expenses. You do not have to pay this money back, and it is given to you typically by the state or the federal government. So they're investing in you because they know that the future of our workforce depends on you. The next type of financial aid is work study. And this is typically when I'm in a room, I'll ask students, how many of you, show of hands, are planning to work part-time while going to school? If you're like me, I had to get a part-time job while I went to college, and I wanted to make sure that my studies were still first. And so I looked for a job on campus, and a lot of those positions will hire students that have work study. With work study, the government is giving you money that you can earn in the form of a paycheck by working on the campus. So the money actually goes um, to the college, and you work for the college and earn that money as part of your paycheck. Because they want you to be a student and be successful with your studies, first and foremost, they do limit the number of hours that you can work to 19 per week. It's part-time. They want you to be a student full-time and be successful at that. Okay, the next type of aid is loans. And students, these loans that I'm talking about are typically for you. They are money that the government gives you to pay your educational expenses. Now, when I say loan, I want to be really clear. When you loan something to somebody else, at some point you want that back. And the federal government is saying the same thing. They are going to loan you money. They don't care if you don't have any credit established. They're not going to ask you to find a cosigner or do a credit check. They're just going to loan you money. And then at some point they want that back. So students, we like to emphasize being really smart with the money you take out and only taking out what you need for your education. I know loans get a really bad rap, and students are like, oh, I don't want to go into debt for my education. I agree. That's where scholarships should be your first priority, is looking at what scholarships you can earn. But being somebody that took out student loans to help get my education and get my career, I'm one that I would say, if you use them wisely and you are really working toward a career path, that student loans can be a path to get you there. Parents, we don't want you to feel left out. So the student loans are money that the student takes out for their education. The parent loans, the parent takes out for the student's education. So then the parent becomes responsible for repaying those loans. So I like to emphasize that, because sometimes parents are like, oh, I'll take this out, but they're going to pay it back. Well, the government is saying that that loan is for you. If you as a family come up with agreements, that's fine, but the government would come to you for repayment on that loan. So students, good time to start having that conversation with your parents. Okay, when we're in a room, I typically like to do a little bit of kind of polling and questions to see what information people already know. Because we're in this venue, I'm just going to share some kind of fun areas where people usually have heard something about financial aid that may or may not be true. So the first question is, my parents make too much money, so I won't qualify for financial aid. And the reality is, you don't know what you qualify for until you file. When we're talking about financial aid, they look at the whole household. They look at income. They look at untaxed income. They look at different areas where you may be paying money out from the income. They look at how many people are supported by that, and out of that income, how many people are going to college. So it's really a complex calculation. So don't skip out on filing financial aid because you don't think you're going to be eligible. We also want to make sure, students, that if you're applying for scholarships, some scholarships require that you file. I know for our CBC Ambassador program, great program, we hire usually around 15 students per year to be student leaders on campus, and they work about 10 hours a week, helping us do tours, helping us talk about what it's like to be a student in college. So we have them work 10 hours a week, and in exchange for that, we pay their tuition for the quarter as a full-time student. One of our requirements, though, is that the students have completed their financial aid application, because we want them to be familiar with that process. So make sure you're filing. So how do you file? Well, there are two different financial aid forms, and we are going to talk a little bit about both of them. And then you would file one or the other, but not both of those forms. So the Fafsa has been around for a very long time. It is a federal form, the free application for federal student aid. It does require that you be a US citizen or eligible non-citizen with a valid social security number to complete the form. In addition to that, males, if you're 18 or creeping up on 18, you're going to want to register for selective service. You can also designate in your financial aid application, your Fafsa, that they can go ahead and register you if you are not 18 yet. The other application is our WASFA application, and Washington is a great state. We want to support our Dreamer students. So if you are a Dreamer or a DACA student, we have a pathway for you to get state financial aid through the WASFA application, Washington Application for State Financial Aid. There are a few additional criteria. You do have to graduate from a Washington high school, and you needed to have lived in the state of Washington for 3 years prior to graduation. The other piece here is the FAFSA can be used federally anywhere in the United States. WASFA funds are restricted because they're Washington state funds. They are restricted in use to within the state of Washington. But good news, we have great schools in the state of Washington, so you'll have a lot of opportunities to access funds. Okay, so as you are applying for financial aid, a couple other things you need to be thinking about. You also need to be applying for admission. The schools that you are going to send your financial aid application to will do nothing with it if you have not also applied for admission to the school. At CVC, we get over 14,000 FAFSAs per year, and we do not have 14,000 students per year. So we get a lot of FAFSA applications that we just kind of hold in an electronic queue. And when a student applies for admission, it lets us know that we need to process that and get them an award offer. You also need to be watching for scholarship deadlines. Our CVC scholarship deadline is February 21st every year. Kind of exciting this year. We do have a second scholarship deadline that's open right now until I think tomorrow's the deadline for current CVC students. So potentially 2 scholarship deadlines, but the one that you need to remember is February 21st. Also, check your email, students. I'm talking specifically to you on this one. You guys are seniors, you're adults, you are applying to college. We want to make sure that you're checking your email. It's kind of an adult business process that we want to emphasize for you. The reason is we very seldom mail stuff out. So you are going to get most of your notifications from financial aid and from the colleges you're planning to attend from your email. So it doesn't hurt every once in a while to even search, use some keyword searches in your junk or in your deleted or spam to look for anything that might be coming from schools that you're interested in applying to. Also, I mentioned, when I was talking about the student loans, to have a conversation with your family. When you're thinking about the college process in general, it's a really good idea to have some conversation. We have a lot of students that have plans on where they want to go, and maybe their parents have other ideas. So for example, a student might be saying, man, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to go as far away from here as I can to go to college. Their parents are saying, well, we're going to pay for you to go to the school that's closest. So have that conversation. I do see Ms. Cook put something in the chat to make sure you have a personal email that you use. And yes, thank you for that. Even though you have a great school email, as you are becoming adults and doing your business processes for financial aid and for admissions, you want to make sure that we have a way to connect with you once you graduate high school and have your individual email address. Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, Apple, whatever you want to do, but make sure you do have a personal email address. Good question or good comment. Okay, so preparing to file. This is a great slide if you want to take a screenshot of it. If there are things that you want to remember from tonight, I have no problem with you taking a quick picture of the screen, or like I said, this is being recorded and you can refer back to it. But students that are filling out their financial aid application are going to want to gather their personal identification information. So a social security number, your taxes. Students, if you didn't fill out taxes for like federal taxes, just grab a copy of your W-2 or an earnings statement that you had um, from that year. Oh, I had another comment that I wanted to share about emails, and it always makes me chuckle. We also want to make sure that when you're setting up your email address that you make it professional. I've seen email addresses that would make you blush, probably silly ones. I've seen like Hot Lips 99. Well, when you're applying for scholarships and when you are applying for people to give you money or to apply for admission, you don't want that email address to be the first impression they have of you. You also want to make sure, going back to preparing to file, so you'll have that email address, you'll gather your documentation. It says records of untaxed income. I'll give you a couple of examples. If someone in your household has veterans benefits or Social Security income, or untaxed income might be child support that's been paid to one of the parents. Those are all items that you would want to gather up what the year total was. I emphasize approximate for approximate value of cash savings and checking, because I have some very honest people that when they fill out their financial aid application, they want to give you exactly the dollar amount that's in their account. And while I appreciate the honesty, I also want you to understand that the government doesn't want to know what is in your checking account the day you get paid. They want to know kind of on average what's there. And I see a lot of families that kind of get nervous with this. They don't know what to do. I want to reassure you, zero is a number. It is okay if you have $0 in your savings account. We encourage you to be honest, but also approximate that amount. So if you have $500 and you know you have a $400 bill coming up that you're going to apply that to, my assessment would be you have about $100 in your account. So I wanted to kind of walk through that, because that's a conversation that I typically have one-on-one with families as they're asking that. Also business or farm values, and then an investment home. This is not the home in which you live. This would be like if you have rental property or additional houses, it would be the value of that. Okay. Let's see if my screen freezes. There we go. Okay, so our next kind of information piece is the question is, I support myself, so I don't have to include parent information on the FAFSA form. And typically when I poll the audience, I'll say, yeah, do you agree with this? No, you don't, not sure. Reality is, this is not necessarily true. We have students every year that go off to college and live independently, do not move back home in the summers to their parents' home. Their parents do not claim them on their taxes, and they are still considered dependent of their parents' financial information for the FAFSA. I know it might not sound fair, I'm sorry, but I want to emphasize that students are considered dependent for financial aid purposes, separate from tax purposes. And we're going to go through who is a dependent or independent. So to be considered independent, you have to meet one of these criteria. Either be over the age of 24, married, have children or dependents of your own that you support more than 50% of the time, be a veteran, thank you for your service, or have completed a bachelor's degree and are working toward a master's degree. And I want to just touch on these. When I say children or dependents, it has to be a child that you support 51% of the time. I say that because we have students that maybe have children, but live at home with their parents and are relying on their parents for support, for housing, for paying the bills, for food, etc. You would not then count that child as your dependent because you have support of your own. I also joke, it's not a good reason students to get married or have children. They're both expensive. So even though it's unfortunate, sometimes you will be considered a dependent on your parents' income until you meet one of these criteria. So most traditional age college students that don't meet these criteria are considered dependent. So the next question is, whose parent information do you provide on the FAFSA? And that might sound like a silly question to some, but our homes and our family units have gotten kind of complex over the years. And we want to make sure that you know which household you are providing information for. So if mom and dad are married, you would provide information for both mom and dad, the household, even if they're living together as married. If mom and dad are separated or divorced, it would be the parent that you reside in the household with 51% of the time. So if that is dad, it would be dad. And if he is remarried, dad, stepmom, and everybody in the household. So they are looking at household information, and they will take all of the people residing. So if dad's remarried and you have 2 step siblings, it would be the household would consist of dad, stepmom, 2 step siblings, yourself, and you would be going to college. So 5 in the family, 1 going to college. We have a question. Do you have to put down the money that your parents have in stock? So there is a place on the FAFSA where it does ask for investments. So you would want to, the great thing about the FAFSA in particular is that it does have some help cues. There are little question marks next to the button, next to the responses for each question, where they give you hints and tips about where to look for that information. So it would say, reference your 1040 tax form line, blah, 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 or look at your W-2 year-end income statement and it'll be box, blah, blah, blah. So yes, but it will cue you for when it wants that information. Okay, so this would be another graphic if you're trying to figure out what household to report information on that you could go ahead and take a picture of. All right, special circumstance. So life does not fit in a pretty little perfect box all the time. Life happens, and the financial aid applications, both FAFSA and WASFA, ask for pretty specific line item numbers from your taxes, very black and white. What I want you to know and what I want to reassure you is that we as financial aid professionals are able to use what we call our professional judgment to do a special circumstance petition for you to look at what was really going on financials in your household for that time. A great example right now is COVID is impacting our world pretty dramatically. So if you have a different financial situation now for your household than you did with the tax year that you provided for your financial aid application, that can be reviewed. So I don't want students to think like, oh, well, we've had a change in finances, so I'm just going to take a year off from school. No, go talk to the schools that you're planning to attend and ask them what they can do to help you look at that. All right, another quick question. My parents aren't US citizens, so there's no way I'll get aid. So this is a great situation that I want to touch on. And then I've got another question in the panel box. So the reality is your financial aid application is for you as a student. So students, I know financial aid is not the most like awesome, amazing thing to listen to, but I hope that you're listening to this because it's really your aid application. So it's not asking for your parents' citizenship status. Your citizenship status determines which of the 2 forms you complete. When it gets to parent information, it does not ask citizenship. It will ask on the FAFSA for a social security number. If your parents don't have one, it's okay. Just go ahead and put in all zeros. I have students that this is a stress point every year. They will come up to me and be really kind of like unsure of what to do. Miss, my parents don't have a social security number. I say, that's fine. Go ahead and put zeros in. The only thing that is different at the end of the FAFSA is that then the student will need to sign it electronically the parent will sign a signature page that gets mailed in versus creating an electronic signature. And I want to really be clear here, a social security number and an ITIN number are not the same thing. So if a parent has an ITIN number, they would not use that on the FAFSA. They would still put in all zeros. We had a question about if students' parents are out of the country, there's no taxes to report, how would the student file? The student would still include parent income from out of the country. I think this is probably a little more complex question. There would be questions on who the student's residing with, guardianship, et cetera, to answer that. But if two parents and one parent is out of the country, you would still report and just kind of do an estimate of what the conversion rate is from where they're at internationally to the US dollar to include on the FAFSA. We can always come back to that question if that wasn't a clear enough answer. Okay, so I kind of mentioned this already that for the FAFSA, and I'm speaking specifically for the FAFSA right now, students will need to create an electronic signature. That electronic signature is called your FSA ID. This is a way that you as a student will use your social security number. It will be tied to your email address and it will be tied to your date of birth, and it creates your electronic signature. Back in the good old paper and pencil days, you would have a pen and you would sign your signature. Well, we do everything electronically now, and so they had to find a way for you to create an electronic identity, and this is it. If you have logged into Netflix lately and forgotten your password, it sets up the same kind of recovery mechanism so that you can go to your email, it will authenticate that it is you, and then you will be able to find your last password. Now, I will say the federal government is a little more secure than Netflix. So students, as you create this, you'll want to write it down. You want to put it in your phone. You want to know. Your FSA ID is a username, and then you will create a password to go with it. And it will probably be one of the most complex passwords you will create. Little recommendation I have is use your FSA ID as everything up to the @ sign of your email address. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and send this out in the chat. My email is Melanie Cachado, M. Cachado, and I would use that as my username versus my whole email address. So everything up to that @ sign you would use as your FSA ID. And then your password will be a combination of letters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, and it cannot have your name or your birth date or anything like that in it. So it is kind of complex. Another note to take down is this FSA ID, Federal Student Aid ID, .ed, which is for education, .gov for government. So that is the site that you will go to create your FSA ID. And both, let's see, here we go. My PowerPoint's giving me a hard time. There we go. Both parent and student will need to get their tax information. So students, if you did not file taxes, that's okay. When we look at the application year and what tax year you gather, I want you to remember this. You are seniors that are going to graduate in June of 2021. You will be freshmen in college for the 2021-2022 school year, which means for prior year financial aid, they want 2 years prior. It would be your 2019 tax information. So students, if you didn't file taxes, that's okay. If you worked and have W-2s, you would want to gather that information. So both student and parent. Now, if it sounds really complicated or confusing, I promise you it's not. The government has actually tried to come up with a quick way. If you're filling out a FAFSA and you have your FSA ID. So parents and students, I do recommend you create your FSA ID before you even tackle the FAFSA. Go set up your FSA ID and then log into the FAFSA. Student will log in with their FSA ID. Parent, when you get to your tax information, it will look like this on the right. You will have an opportunity to use what is called the IRS data retrieval tool. IRS and FAFSA do not talk back and forth to each other, but they do let you reach out into the FAFSA, grab the information, drag it in, and drop it in the appropriate fields. So this is where one of the questions earlier was something about investments. If your parents report like their investments on their taxes and there's interest income, and that is used in the financial aid formula, it would pull that in automatically from the tax forms and put it right in the perfect spot. We then would see this transferred from IRS on our school end, and we would know that the information is accurate. It will save you time in the future using the IRS data retrieval tool, in that if you're selected for verification, you don't have to gather any additional documents. You can just say, I use the IRS data retrieval tool, and you'll be done. Great recommendation from my colleague Catalina. She said, make sure you start a binder. Do something to put all your paperwork in so that you have it when the time comes to fill out these forms. All right, you get to the end of your financial aid application. If you're filling out your FAFSA, and the information that is used for both forms is very similar, the questions are very similar. There are just a few places in the process that are different. The beginning for the FAFSA, you have to complete the FSA ID. And at the end, both parent and student use their FSA ID to sign it, unless the parent does not have a social security number, and then you print off the signature page and mail it in. WASFA, at the end, the signature, the student will send an email to the parent that creates a link for the parent to log in and electronically sign the WASFA. So parents would just need an email address for that. So I want to emphasize, keep going on both applications until you get a confirmation number. Students will sometimes sign their FAFSA, both parent and student, they're high five and they're like, yeah, we're done. I'm like, wait a minute, you still have to click submit. So make sure you go until you get a confirmation number. Okay, and we are talking about this. October is a very busy month. Typically there's football, typically there's all this stuff going on. Well, the most important part is that you're filling out your financial aid application. It opens October 1st every year. I've got the FAFSA and the WASFA web addresses down at the bottom. We want you to fill it out as soon as possible so that you are eligible to get the best aid available to you. We don't want you to miss out on funds that may be on a first come, first served basis because you wait. If you're still on the fence about whether you're even going to go to college next year, fill this out, because it's a great opportunity to learn what you are eligible for and how it could make a difference in paying for college. All right, so we encourage you to hurry up and fill out your financial aid application. Now what? It's going to be crickets for a while. You guys, we want you to get it filled out as soon as possible, but then it's a hurry up and wait game. You are going to have some other items that you can be taking care of in that wait time by applying for admission. You can list up to 10 schools on your financial aid application. With that, you then need to start applying to those schools. I did list CBC's school code here for you, so you can take a picture of this or take a note of it. You can enter that in your financial aid application as a school to receive your FAFSA, but then go out and apply for admission. We're excited to welcome you to the college. You also need to make sure you're researching scholarships that are available. Again, our foundation scholarship application, the website is there. For the 2019-2020 year, we awarded over $1 million to our CBC students. It was awesome to see the impact that that money has on our students being able to reach their goals. We have a dedicated group in our foundation, and I know that they are working diligently to make sure that we have great scholarship dollars again this upcoming year for our students. So make sure seniors are writing down these dates and deadlines. Also, again, check your email. We want to make sure that you're checking your email. While you may get award letters via mail, the reality is most things are sent via email at this point in time. Okay, so hurry up and wait. You're going to fill out your FAFSA or WASFA as soon as possible. It probably won't be until February or March, to be very honest with you, before you start hearing from the schools that you've applied to and sent your financial aid application to for them to tell you what your next steps are. So during that time, that wait time, that's a great opportunity to focus on scholarships. Okay, so we have some state funding that I wanted to just touch on because this is an amazing opportunity for students. If College Bound sounds familiar to you, it may. Many of our students are reached out to in their middle school years to be made aware of this College Bound program. College Bound is a, excuse me, it is an early commitment of state money toward your tuition. And you can use it at many schools throughout the state of Washington, 60, including public colleges and universities, private colleges and universities, community and technical colleges. It says private career colleges, and I'll give you an example of one of those. If you wanted to go to the Paul Mitchell School, that would be like a private career college. So there are a lot of different institutions where this money that you are eligible for can be used toward your tuition and fees, your books. And it is the government saying, if you still meet the criteria, this money is there for you. And here's the criteria that you need to meet. You had to have applied in middle school. So you would have had a letter that came home that you signed, your parents signed and sent back. And then now as a high school senior, you meet these criteria, including you're graduating with a 2.0 or better GPA, no felony convictions, you still meet the income eligibility. You do need to enroll within 1 year of high school graduation. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to take a gap year, I don't recommend it because it's harder to go back and reconnect the following year. But also you may lose out on some funding. I was doing this financial aid workshop the other night at a different school, and I had a student who said, oh, I'm going to take a gap year, but I've already been awarded scholarships. They'll just hold them for me, right? And I said, I don't know. I mean, scholarships vary, but a lot of scholarships, they have a budget of money that they have to spend in that academic year. So if you don't take advantage of it, they give it to someone else. So the College Bound is important that you enroll within 1 year. And then you do have 4 years of that fund, 4 years of tuition and fees that you can use. And I want to show you a sample of an award offer at CBC. I know that this may be kind of hard to read. It's awfully little print, but what I want to highlight is when the school reaches out to you with your financial aid award offer and next steps, they will direct you to a financial aid kind of portal or login where you will log in. For CBC, it's with your social security number or WASFA ID number, and you will get in there to see what you've been given. This student, and this was for last year, fall of 2019, we arrange our financial aid by quarters, so fall, winter, and spring. This student had a total quarterly award of over $3,600. So this Washington State Need Grant and the Washington College Bound Scholarship combined to cover their tuition and fees at CBC. In addition to that, they had $2,000 in a federal Pell Grant. Do you know what their tuition was per quarter? So they had $3,600 in an award. Their tuition and fees at CBC was only approximately $1,600. So that means that $2,000, the student gets refunded to them if they have no other academic expenses. In this CBC example, they can put toward purchasing technology, they can put toward other educational expenses, they can put it in savings for when they transfer to a university. There's a lot of opportunities there. So we want you to see what it looks like and understand that this process, it will take you through to spring before you probably have a final award offer and know what exactly is covered by financial aid. Okay, so scholarships. I like to touch a little more on scholarships because I think people get frustrated with financial aid and feeling like maybe they are, maybe they aren't eligible. Well, scholarships are for everyone. There are really a variety of funds out there. You do not have to be a 4.0 student. You do not have to be the rock star athlete to get a scholarship. There are so many scholarships that have criteria that you probably meet one of the criteria somewhere. So it just takes a little bit of research. Look at what they cover: tuition, fees, books, supplies, housing, whatever they can cover. Some questions or things to be aware of. We never ever want you to pay for scholarship searches. Scholarships should be gift aid. Typically, it's a group of donors who feel strongly about something, and so they're giving money to students to meet their cause. Questions to ask when you get awarded a scholarship: is it renewable? Is this a one-year scholarship, or do you get to keep it for the whole time you're in school? If you get to keep it for multiple years, what do you have to do to keep it? Typically, there's criteria if you have to complete so many credits or you have to earn such and such a GPA. So they want to make sure that you're moving forward in your academic experience. Also, can the scholarship transfer with you? If you've got a scholarship and you transfer schools, is that award going with you? Or was it awarded to you at the school and you lose it if you transfer? Those are all good things to know. Your best resource for scholarships is going to be your counselors. It's going to be your high school, because they are going to know, the local scholarships that are right here for you, that are specific to your graduating class, as well as be in the know of all of the larger scholarship search processes. Again, please take a picture of this. There are a lot of resources listed on this screen. Washington Opportunity Scholarship is an amazing, amazing Washington State scholarship program. So I would encourage you to look into that. But all of these resources have scholarship opportunities, and there are more out there. So I'm going to pause for a minute here and see if either of your counselors want to say anything about scholarships. Ladies?
Thanks, Melanie. Yes, so I wanted to share with all students and remind you that Mrs. Brandt is the person who you would want to reach out to if you are looking for scholarships. She does a wonderful job and posts a senior newsletter that can be found in our North Rankin School District. You go under the Connell High School tab, and there's like a thing that says key documents. If you scroll down, and you'll see the senior newsletter. And so she posts that every month. And so that lists different scholarships that she has found. And not just that, but it shows on there how to join the classroom from class of 2021, where there's also posts about new scholarship information that we get. I know CBC is going to have a night where they help students fill out their financial aid. And so that information is there, and there's a link to signing up for that. So yes, if you go to your Google Classroom class of 2021, Ms. Cook has posted that information so you can sign up. And so that's another resource for you to know about scholarships or different resources that are available to you. And then if you have any questions, please reach out to Ms. Brandt, reach out to Ms. Cook or to myself, and we are very happy to help you and support you on this journey navigating financial aid and scholarships.
And students, you guys are so lucky. I've been working with Connell High School for the last several years, and I know that your counselors, these ladies, are here for you, and you have some great scholarship opportunities available to you. We do have an event coming up next Thursday, October 15th. You can email our CBC outreach email, and we will send you the link to register. We do require registration. In fact, I might actually get that and put the registration link in the chat in just a minute. We do want to be able to offer this resource so that if you have questions, we will have experts on hand. It is a virtual event via Zoom, but we've got it so that we are able to pull you into a private Zoom breakout room to meet with an expert to help walk you through any questions you have on your application. So please plan to attend next Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. Bring your questions, bring your tax information, bring your FSA ID, and we'll help you through it. Also at CBC, we have a variety of workshops, not just on financial aid. Students, if you're thinking about attending CBC, we'd be happy to help you with that process. We typically love to be in the high schools and connect with you and offer you these services in person, but just with the nature of how things are this year, we aren't able to accept via Zoom and online. So please reach out, raise your hand, tell us you have questions, ask for help. Check out our events calendar because we have a variety of information sessions about our different academic programs. So if you have an academic interest you want to explore, please let us know because we'd like to get you connected with somebody in that academic area. A lot of schools are doing this. So I'm wearing my CBC hat, but I want to be very honest with you students. We just want to help you succeed and figure out what your college path looks like. So I'm going to pause before I turn it back over and just see, are there any questions? Does anyone want to put something in the chat that they might want to have answered? All right, and I do see that the event link went out in the chat. If you want to register for that financial aid event, you can copy or click on the link. We are excited to be able to host that, especially since we were concerned we wouldn't have an opportunity to connect with students this year. So we definitely want you to get your financial aid application completed. And we hope that we're able to answer any questions you might have along the way. The last link that I am going to go ahead and put in the chat is one for you to request information. Students, if you're sitting there and you have questions about CBC and you don't know how to reach out or who to reach out to, here's a link as a quick form. Does not say that we are going to stalk you and spam you with a bunch of email. It just says we're going to follow up, try to answer your questions, and invite you to events or connect you with information as it is relevant to your college search process based on what you designate on that form. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions come through in the chat. Ladies, do either of you have additional information you want to share before we turn it over to Catalina?
I don't think so. We just want to really thank you, Melanie and Catalina, for spending your time with us tonight and sharing the information for our students, and remind the students that we're all here to help you also at the high school. And Mrs. Infante Castro and Mrs. Brandt and myself all have experience with Fafsa and financial aid, and so we can help answer questions, or if we can't answer the questions, we know who to ask and find the answers for you guys.
Yes, and if you don't want to reach out to us, yes, go to your counselors. I was messaging with a counselor from Richland High earlier today who had questions on behalf of a student, and our goal is just to help you get it completed so that you can see what's available. So thank you so much for attending tonight. Miss Infante Castro, do we need to pause before we start the Spanish part of the evening?
Yes, I think that would be a good idea. Maybe we can stop the recording for this one, and that way.
Vamos a platicar sobre eso. Vamos a cubrir esos ahorita. Déjame share my screen. Y si tienen preguntas, por favor, pregunten sobre el chat. Okay.
Y Catalina, me imagino que íbamos a tal vez grabar el resto de la sesión, ¿correcto?
Yes. Sí. Sí lo estoy.
Oh, correcto. Ujú.
Sí. Sí, parece que sí se está grabando, ¿verdad?
Sí, ya miro arriba que sí se está grabando para mirar
Ok.
después.
Ok. Entonces, vamos a empezar. ¿Cómo se paga el colegio comunitario? ¿Ok? No sé si saben o no, pero muchos padres piensan que no hay, o sea, ellos piensan que no tienen dinero para que sus hijos vayan al colegio. Yo también pensaba lo mismo porque mis papás creciendo, no tenían mucho dinero para que hiciéramos muchas cosas, pero estamos aquí para decirles que sí hay maneras para que maneras para que les ayuden a pagar el colegio. Y eso es la ayuda financiera. Por primero, ¿cuánto cuesta el colegio? Para una universidad privada puede costarles hasta $45,000 por el año. Para una universidad privada o pública, perdón, puedes costarles hasta $25,000 por el año. Y luego tenemos el colegio comunitario, que es nuestro colegio de CBC. Está en Pasco. Este colegio, para que un estudiante pueda venir por un año, solamente cuesta $5,000, como $5,000 por el año. Pueden ver que el costo es mucho más bajo que una universidad privada. Y lo podemos comparar como las universidades públicas son como UW, WSU. Si saben las sudaderas que tienen muchos con rojas. Y para venir para el colegio comunitario sí es mucho más, mucho menos. Y ahora, ¿cómo podemos pagar por el colegio? Hay tres maneras que pueden escoger. La primera es ayuda financiera, que es el Fafsa o el WASFA. Y les voy a dar más información sobre los dos. Los estudiantes, si me están escuchando, nomás van a llenar la aplicación del Fafsa o el WASFA. Una u otra, no van a llenar las dos. Y luego, este dinero de la ayuda financiera que los estudiantes que les dan del FAFSA o WASFA es dinero gratis, no es dinero que tienen que pagar otra vez, que tienen que devolver. La segunda cosa son las becas. Las becas, tenemos estos dos sitios aquí y también tengo más que les voy a enseñar al último. Las becas es dinero gratis también que los estudiantes ganan sobre el colegio, sobre la comunidad y también les voy a dar más información sobre eso. Y lo último son préstamos privados. Los préstamos, como ustedes saben, si les pido el celular, si les pido que me lo presten, usted va a querer que le devolvemos el celular para atrás. Pero así son los préstamos. Cuando organizaciones o bancos te prestan el dinero, pero al fin cuando te gradúas, ellos quieren que les devuelvas ese dinero y con interés. Si te prestan $5,000, cuando te gradúas, no nomás les debes $5,000, les debes casi $6,000 por el interés. Y aquí son los tipos de ayuda financiera. Son las becas, como les dije, es dinero otorgado a los estudiantes basado en los logros académicos. Las becas las puedes recibir, hay muchas becas en cualquier lugar. Hay becas de la comunidad, como dijo la señora Jessica. Jessica, do you want to talk about a little bit about your scholarships right now or at the end?
I can talk about them now or at the end. I know there's a section where you talk about scholarships
yes.
later, but
Yeah, there is.
Okay, yeah, we can do it then.
Ok. Estas becas como en CBC tenemos una beca y también les voy a dar más información sobre esa. Se llama the CBC Foundation Scholarship y esta beca es para estudiantes que van a venir al colegio y pueden ganar casi hasta $3,000 por el año. Y ese dinero es gratis y CBC escoge a los estudiantes, a los que aplican, que llenaron la aplicación completamente, que entregaron todo lo que se necesitaba para la aplicación para que sea completa, que tienen buenas calificaciones, que juegan deportes, muchas cosas así. Y ese dinero lo pueden aplicar los estudiantes para esa beca ya. También al ratito la señora Jessica les va a dar más información sobre becas que tienen sus consejeros. Ellos tienen becas, información de becas de la comunidad, de otras organizaciones que son dispuestos a darles a los estudiantes para ayudarles para que vayan al colegio. Y pueden aplicar en línea o localmente. Como mi familia es de Prócer y cuando yo estaba en la high school, hay una compañía de fruta en Prócer y esa compañía también daba becas a los estudiantes para los estudiantes que tenían a padres que trabajaban ahí. So, pueden checar también con sus trabajos si hay esas oportunidades también. Y otra manera de recibir dinero es de estudio de trabajo. Este es dinero que los estudiantes ganan a través del trabajo en el colegio. Entonces tenemos en el colegio, pues ahorita no porque está cerrado, pero típicamente durante el año los estudiantes pueden recibir trabajos en el colegio sobre estudio de trabajo. Y así se llama en inglés, el término es un poco diferente, pero la ayuda financiera, hay que decir, les da $1,000 y de estudio de trabajo. Y los estudiantes pueden usar esos $1,000 para agarrar un trabajo en la escuela, como en la biblioteca, y ya la biblioteca les ayuda para que trabajen, pueden ayudar con los libros, a limpiar mesas, con lo que sea. Y cuando trabajan, es el gobierno que les está pagando al estudiante en vez del colegio. Por eso el estudio de trabajo es muy popular en el colegio, porque nosotros no les estamos pagando a los estudiantes, es el gobierno que les dio el dinero para que trabajen. Y es bueno porque está allí, no tienen que manejar, no tienen que sacar tiempo del día para irse a un trabajo, está ahí y es flexible también. Y como les dije, los préstamos. Los estudiantes pueden sacar préstamos si no ganan becas o si no reciben ayuda financiera, pero pues todo depende de qué es lo que quiere el estudiante. Por ejemplo, yo me acuerdo cuando estaba en el colegio, yo nunca quería sacar préstamos, entonces yo trabajé en el colegio porque no quería graduarme y luego empezar a pagar ese dinero más interés. Eso es algo que yo nunca quería hacer. Al contrario, mi hermano se fue a la universidad y a él no le importó que sacara préstamos, pero ahora los está pagando más interés, que es, en este momento él piensa que no fue una buena idea sacar los préstamos, pero cuando estuvo en el colegio, pues en ese momento sí era lo que él quería hacer. Todo depende de qué es lo que quiere el estudiante. Y como ahorita nosotros los estudiantes tienen una manera de que los estudiantes se aguarden dinero y que no tengan que sacar préstamos es ir a colegio comunitario. Ok, una pregunta. Dice, mis padres hacen demasiado dinero, así que no califico para ayuda financiera. Esto es falso, porque no hay límite de ingresos para calificar. Muchos estudiantes piensan que porque sus papás hacen mucho dinero no les van a dar nada, pero nunca saben, porque todo se tiene que tomar en cuenta. Cuántos hay en la familia, cuánto tienen en sus cuentas, cuánto hicieron, cuántos en la familia están yendo al colegio. Todo depende. no piensen así, llenen la forma y luego se van a dar cuenta. Y también en el colegio de CBC hay unos estudiantes que no llenan el FAFSA o el WASFA porque piensan que los papás hacen mucho dinero y luego también por no llenar la aplicación, el colegio no les da dinero tampoco. Tenemos cierto dinero que les damos a los estudiantes que no califican para ayuda financiera. No es mucho, pero es algo para ayudarles para pagar los libros, para pagar lo que sea, el costo del colegio. So, les sugerimos a todos los estudiantes que llenen la aplicación, aunque piensan que califican o no. Y ahora, ¿cómo se califican? ¿Cómo podemos calificar para el FAFSA o el WASFA? Entonces, aquí tenemos para la solicitud del FAFSA, esta aplicación es para los estudiantes que son ciudadanos o ciudadanos estadounidenses y para los residentes permanentes legales. Tienes que tener un número de seguro social válido o número de registro extranjero. ¿Okay? Y para los varones, tienen que registrarse para el servicio selectivo. ¿Okay? Esto solamente es para los varones. Y muchos piensan que pueden sobrepasar ese paso en la aplicación, pero no. Si lo sobrepasan, la aplicación no va a ser completa o sí se completa, pero no pueden recibir los varones ayuda financiera porque tienen que registrarse. Esto nomás es para el FAFSA. Para el WASFA es un poco diferente. El WASFA es exactamente como la aplicación de FAFSA, pero se llama diferente porque nomás es para los estudiantes de Washington, solo los que están aquí. Si tiene familia en Oregon, no puede llenar esta aplicación, es solamente para aquí. Es para los estudiantes que no son elegibles para la ayuda financiera y es para ayudar a los estudiantes que también pueden ser con el estatus de DACA o para los estudiantes que no son ciudadanos. Lo único que tienen que hacer es graduarse de una escuela de Washington, una escuela secundaria de Washington, y vivir en Washington durante 3 años antes de la graduación. Muchos piensan que hay que decir, se vienen en el grado 11, están aquí el grado 11, 12 y se gradúan. En ese caso, ellos piensan que se pueden esperar otro año y luego pueden empezar para recibir esta ayuda financiera del WASFA, pero eso no es verdad, eso es falso. El estudiante tiene que vivir en Washington 3 años antes de graduarse, ¿ok? ¿Tienen preguntas? Ok. Ok, so, ¿qué información necesito? Para llenar la aplicación de Fafsa o WASFA, van a necesitar el número de seguro social o número de registro extranjero, información de impuestos, registros de ingreso no tributable y valor de aproximación de ahorros o cuentas de cheques. Y también de su negocio o finca si usted es el dueño. Para esta parte del FAFSA, hay muchos estudiantes, les pregunta qué es la aproximación de su cuenta de cheques. Usted le puede poner, si usted no tiene dinero o si tiene dinero, hay que decir como $500, pero esos $500 se van a ir porque tiene que pagar sus biles, le puede poner 0. No tiene que ponerle exactamente lo que es que tiene. Es nomás un número, es nomás un número de aproximación. Y también su número de DACA para el WASFA. Ok, otra pregunta. Me apoyo a mí mismo, no tengo que incluir información sobre mis padres en el formulario Fafsa o WASFA. Esto no es necesariamente cierto. El estudiante todavía es considerado estudiante dependiente por propósitos de ayuda federal. Y son los estudiantes, si ellos, aunque se apoyen a sí mismo, de todos modos, porque están debajo de la edad de 24, ellos tienen que usar la información de sus papás. Si no, no pueden recibir ayuda financiera. La única manera que se puede ser considerado independiente es si el estudiante tiene 24 años de edad, si se casa, si tiene niños o dependientes que los mantienen más de 50%, si es un veterano o si está cumpliendo un programa de nivel de graduado. Ok, perdón, vamos a mirar el chat muy rápido. Ok, si ya, sí, ok. So, por la pregunta que si te graduaste el año pasado, puedes aplicar ahora. Y como dijo la señora Jessica, sí puedes y debes aplicar cada año que vayas al colegio. Esto es verdad. Tienes que aplicar para, sí puedes aplicar para el FAFSA o para el FAFSA cada año. No tiene que ver nada cuando te gradúas, pero para el WASFA, si tú tienes que llenar la aplicación de WASFA, tienes que llenar el WASFA cuando sea con que has vivido en Washington menos de 3 años. No. Ajá, menos de 3 años cuando te graduaste. Si hay que decir si te viniste en el grado 11 y luego cuando te graduaste era 2 años que estabas aquí y no llenaste el WASFA hasta el próximo año que viene, entonces no puedes llenar el WASFA. Tiene que ser, no puedes calificar para el WASFA, pero si sí calificas para el WASFA y nomás no has empezado el colegio, sí lo puedes llenar después. Ok. Entonces, ¿quiénes son mis padres? Esta figura aquí está en inglés, no puedo encontrar una en español, pero nomás les está enseñando que quiénes son los papás, quiénes son los padres para saber de quién vamos a usar la información para la aplicación. Entonces, como puedes ver aquí, si los papás están casados, entonces usas la información de los dos en el FAFSA o el WASFA. Si los papás viven juntos pero no están casados, usas la información de los dos en el FAFSA o el WASFA. Si los papás están divorciados y hay que decir que vives con los dos, pero vives más con uno, tienes que usar la información del padre que te da más de 50% de soporte. Y también hay circunstancias especiales, como qué pasa si su situación financiera es diferente de la representación de su declaración de impuestos. Hay que decir que ahorita llenan su FAFSA o WASFA en octubre, ¿ok? Pero cuando se gradúan, pasa algo, una circunstancia especial como sus papás pierden su trabajo, que es probablemente que puede pasar porque, pues ustedes saben, por la pandemia que estamos pasando ahorita, muchos perdieron su trabajo. Hay que decir que eso pasa al fin del año. Lo que pueden hacer es llenar la forma de circunstancias especiales y esta forma les puede ayudar para ver si califican para dinero viendo la situación de que al principio tenían cierta cantidad de dinero y al fin del año les bajó mucho. ¿ok? So no piensen que porque si su situación cambia, no piensen que no hay nada que pueden hacer. Sí hay algo que pueden hacer y el colegio hace esta forma para ayudar a los estudiantes que pasan por situaciones de esas. Ok, otra pregunta. Dice, mis padres no son, y esta es muy importante, so pongan atención. Mis padres no son ciudadanos estadounidenses, entonces no hay manera de recibir ayuda financiera. Esto es falso porque el Fafsa y el WASFA sí necesitan la información de sus papás, pero si los papás no tienen, si los papás no son ciudadanos, si no tienen seguro social, eso no importa, porque la ayuda financiera no va a hacer nada, no les va a mandar su información al Estado, no hace nada de eso. Ellos nomás necesitan la información para saber pues la situación del estudiante. Si los papás no tienen seguro social, el estudiante lo que va a hacer es ponerle 000 en el espacio donde está pidiendo el número de seguro social. Es todo. Y lo que va a hacer, hay que decir que papá no tiene seguro social y mamá sí. Lo que va a hacer es va a llenar el Fafsa o el WASFA, no, el Fafsa nomás lo va a llenar, le va a poner 000 en el espacio del papá y luego va a poner el de mamá y al último va a tener que imprimir la página para mandar la aplicación sobre el correo. Sobre el correo. Eso es la única diferencia que hay. So, no piense que porque los papás no son ciudadanos que no se puede llenar la aplicación. Todavía califican. Ok, y esto es otra cosa que va a ser afectada si los papás no tienen seguro social. Si los dos papás no tienen seguro social, la aplicación, y como les dije, le van a poner 000 a los dos espacios del papá y del mamá, y luego el estudiante va a imprimir la aplicación, nomás es una página, los papás le van a firmar y típicamente lo que hacen los estudiantes es se la dan a los consejeros, no sé en este caso si va a ser la señora Jessica, se las dan y los maestros o consejeros las están mandando por correo, porque a veces se les hace más fácil. Sí, y es todo. Para los estudiantes que tienen los papás que sí tienen seguro social, van a tener que llenar la aplicación y también van a tener que crear un ID de Fafsa. So es como una identificación para el papá o el mamá o la mamá. So el ID de Fafsa, no, el ID de FSA va a ser la firma electrónica del papá o mamá. ¿Ok? So se necesita un ID de FSA para el estudiante y para la mamá o el papá. Uno o el otro, no los dos. ¿Okay? Y también para hacer el ID de FCA van a necesitar el número de seguro social. ¿Ok? Y esto es para que la aplicación se pueda mandar por electrónicamente en vez de imprimirla y mandarla por correo. Y para hacer esto, muchos de los estudiantes ahorita tal vez ya la han empezado, pero pueden empezar el Fafsa y luego crear el ID de FSA al último o lo pueden hacer al principio. Pero sí van a necesitar la información de su papá o su mamá. Tienen que escoger uno. Y también para crear esto del papá o mamá, van a necesitar su información, su número de seguro social, su fecha de nacimiento y van a necesitar un correo electrónico para utilizar la cuenta. ¿Ok? Y si no tienen un correo electrónico, van a tener que crearle uno o pueden usar uno del estudiante como yo tenía dos, entonces mi mamá usó uno que yo tenía y yo nomás se lo hice todo. Ella casi nunca se metía al correo electrónico porque no sabía, pero pueden hacerlo de esa manera también. Pero sí, asegúrense que los correos electrónicos que están usando no son de la escuela, porque los de la escuela van a terminarse, ¿ok? Y luego no van a poder meterse o usarlos. No sé cuánto tiempo dura para que se terminen, pero tienen que crear un correo electrónico personal. Ok, perdón. ¿Y qué información fiscal es necesaria? Como les dije, van a necesitar impuestos y todo eso para llenar la aplicación. Lo que van a necesitar es la información de declaración de impuestos de ingresos federales, la información de los W-2s y van a usar los impuestos de 2 años antes. Por ejemplo, para el año escolar de 19-20, el año pasado, usaron los impuestos de 2017. Para este año, van a usar los impuestos de 2018. ¿Okay? Todo lo que me gusta decirle a los estudiantes es cuando hacen los impuestos, sus taxas, les dan un paquete, se lo ponen todo en un paquete y ahí está todo. Eso es toda la información que van a necesitar, pero en este caso va a ser la información de 2018. ¿Ok? Cuando se llena el Fafsa, hay una cosa que se llama la herramienta de recuperación de datos del IRS. Esta herramienta lo que hace es que transfiere la información de las taxas del IRS, de sus impuestos del 2017, 2018, de cualquier año, la enlaza y la pone en la aplicación. ¿Okay? Pero esto solamente funciona si hicieron los impuestos y creo que si los usaron con su seguro social. A veces, y tiene que ser exactamente como si tiene 2 domicilios y le pone un domicilio y ya no es no es el que usó para los impuestos de 2017, no va a funcionar. La información de los impuestos de 2017 tiene que ser exactamente lo que ponen en la herramienta para que la enlace. Y si hacen esto es mucho más fácil y les ahorra mucho tiempo para que puedan terminar la aplicación más rápida. Y la información es correcta. Muchas veces como nosotros les estamos ayudando a los estudiantes en las escuelas y estamos tratando de hacerlo rápido, a veces pasan errores y la aplicación se entrega, pero hay con errores. Entonces, y sí pasa porque hay muchos números que tienen que imponer en la aplicación. Entonces, haciéndola de esta manera es mucho más fácil y más correcta. Ok, la firma. Ya llenamos la aplicación, creamos el ID de FCA para completamente entregar la aplicación del Fafsa, como les dije. Tienen que utilizar el ID de FCA para firmar ¿cómo se dice? Por el internet. Y solamente tienes que imprimir la página de firma si los papás no tienen seguro social. ¿Okay? Es la única razón. Si los papás tienen seguro social, van a entregar la aplicación por el internet. Si no tienen seguro social, la van a imprimir y la van a entregar por correo. ¿Ok? Para el WASFA, el estudiante va a usar el correo electrónico de su papá o su mamá y van a tener que firmar sobre el internet y es todo, electrónicamente. ¿Ok? Aunque tenga seguro social o no, todo va a ser por correo electrónico. Entonces, ¿cuándo pueden empezar a llenar esta aplicación? La aplicación se abre octubre 1 y como ahorita ya estamos a octubre 9, 8, ya la aplicación ya está abierta. Los estudiantes ya pueden empezar a llenar esta aplicación y sugerimos que la llenen en cuanto antes, porque lo más que esperan, si esperan mucho tiempo, a veces reciben menos dinero, porque todos los estudiantes, el dinero está como, hay que decir que el dinero está en una cubeta. Lo más que los estudiantes están aplicando, ese dinero se está regalando. Entonces, no quieras esperarte hasta el último cuando todas las becas y el dinero ya ha sido regalado a los estudiantes. Tienen que asegurarse que todo lo hacen con tiempo. Y también, si lo hacen con tiempo, como están en el grado 12, si llenan la aplicación en diciembre, ya pueden enfocarse por los meses que faltan para aplicar a los colegios, para aplicar por becas y para cosas así, en vez de estresarse y hacer todo a un solo tiempo. También quieren hacerlo temprano porque cuando aplican al colegio, quieren que su dinero esté listo para cuando empiecen. Si se esperan como hasta el verano, ese dinero no va a estar listo y tal vez van a tener que pagar por su propio dinero porque no llenaron la aplicación. Ok, y entonces cuando llenan la aplicación y la entregan electrónicamente o por correo, ¿y ahora qué? ¿Qué pasa? Después de llenar la solicitud de ayuda financiera, tienen que aplicar a los colegios, a todos los que quieren ir. Si quieren ir a CBC, si quieren ir a la universidad, a cualquier colegio, tienen que aplicar porque es un proceso de 2 pasos. Llenan la aplicación de ayuda financiera y luego la aplicación del colegio. Si nomás llenan la aplicación de Fafsa y no aplican al colegio, el colegio nunca va a recibir su información y no van a poder empezar el colegio porque no aplicaron. Y si nomás aplican al colegio y no llenan la ayuda financiera, pueden empezar al colegio, pero van a tener que pagar de su propio dinero porque no llenaron la aplicación. ¿Me entienden? Tienen que hacer los dos para que todo funcione bien y puedan empezar a tiempo. Y también, ya que apliquen para ayuda financiera, no piensen que la ayuda financiera les va a pagar todo. En unos casos, sí, a unos estudiantes que son elegibles, les paga mucho, hasta todo. En casos, les paga todo el costo del colegio. Y ahorita les voy a enseñar una figura, pero también apliquen para becas, porque hay unos casos que estudiantes, la ayuda financiera les paga la mitad y las becas les pagan la otra mitad. Eso funciona bien, pero tienen que asegurarse que están buscando becas y que están aplicando por ellas antes de fecha de límite. Como les dije, la fundación de CBC tiene una beca que tiene fecha límite del 21 de febrero. Ya está abierta, ya pueden aplicar por esta, está por línea y esta beca se me hace que 88% de estudiantes que aplicaron recibieron esta beca. Y como les dije, puede subir hasta $3,000. Y cuando miraron al principio, el costo de un año de CBC nomás es como $5,000. No es tanto. $3,000 de una beca es más de la mitad pagada. y con ayuda financiera puede pagarles todo y no tiene que pagar o usar su propio dinero. Pero tienen que aplicar para las becas, buscarlas y luego revisar su correo electrónico, porque hay unos estudiantes que llenan la ayuda financiera y tal vez tienen un error y nosotros les mandamos para que lo arreglen por correo electrónico, pero porque no lo checan, no lo arreglan. Y entonces, cuando ya quieren empezar o registrarse para las clases, no pueden o hay un problema porque no llenaron, no corrigieron su ayuda financiera, su Fafsa o WASFA. So, es muy importante de este punto en adelante que estén revisando su correo electrónico y porque esta es la manera de que los colegios se van a comunicar con todos ustedes. No les van a hablar y no estamos en sus clases para decirles, hey, llena tu aplicación o entrega este papel, porque como les dijo, ya son adultos. En nuestros ojos, ustedes ya tienen 18, son adultos y tienen que hacer todo esto por ustedes. Ok, so aquí está un correo, un ejemplo de un correo electrónico notificándoles que inicien la sesión en su portal de ayuda financiera de CBC. Y esta es, a ver si lo pueden ver. No sé si se puede ver claramente, pero cuando se meten a su portal de CBC, de ayuda financiera, si pueden ver, aquí dice Fall 2019, otoño 2019, awarded, este es dinero gratis que el estudiante recibió del otoño, está recibiendo $100 por una beca que se ganó, $2,000 de estudio de trabajo para el colegio. Este dinero solamente lo puede recibir si agarra un trabajo en el colegio. Si no trabaja en el colegio, ese dinero no se lo van a dar. Pero la beca sí. Los $100, los $1,369 también es de ayuda financiera y los $2,000 de arriba también son de ayuda financiera. Si hacen la matemática, casi son 3,000 $3,000 para este estudiante. Lo que van a recibir, este estudiante va a recibir $3,000 cada trimestre de otoño, el verano y el invierno. Y el costo nomás es como por trimestre, nomás es como 1,700. So, si están recibiendo $3,000, van a tener como $1,500 de sobra para usarlo para gasolina, para comida, para los libros, tal vez para una computadora, para lo que sea. Ese dinero que les sobra es para ustedes, para que lo usen, para que les ayude con su educación. ¿Okay? Y el colegio no les habla y no está buscando para ver qué están usando, en qué usaron el dinero. No, ese dinero es de ustedes porque se los dio el gobierno para que lo usen. Otra pregunta. I see a chat. Ok. Perdón. So, la última pregunta. Se me pasó. Ok. Dice, no puedo presentar mi Fafsa en octubre porque yo no he aplicado a las universidades. Esto en realidad no es verdad porque los estudiantes pueden aplicar al colegio primero o hacer el Fafsa primero, cualquiera. Con que se hagan los dos y se entreguen los dos, esto es lo más importante. So, no piense que no puede aplicar para el colegio porque no ha llenado su Fafsa. Puede hacer cualquier primera primero, no se tiene que esperar, no importa, pero lo importante es que llene las dos. ¿Ok? Entonces, aquí es información de becas. Pueden tomarle una foto. Todos estos son sitios para ayudarles a buscar becas, como el de arriba que se llama thewashboard.org. Este sitio, pones tu información, pones lo que te gusta, lo que quieres estudiar, tus metas, todo eso, y el sitio ¿cómo se dice? Te pone con becas que son similares a tus gustos. Y hay hay muchas becas que te ponen. Yo recibí una beca por ese sitio también. Y hay muchos más, como pueden mirar aquí. Y también hay sitios que sus consejeros tienen. Y voy a dejar a la señora Jessica que platique un poco sobre esto.
Sí, gracias. Entonces, ahorita en el chat les puse el enlace para la carta de cada mes a los estudiantes del 12. Entonces, la señora Brandt es la persona en nuestra escuela que tiene una lista de todas las becas que ella recibe locales y ella hace la carta que les pone a los estudiantes de cada mes que se puede encontrar en el sitio de web del distrito. Y luego si va usted a la página que tiene la escuela de Connell, hay una parte en donde dice Key Documents, son documentos claves, y ahí está la carta de cada mes de los estudiantes del 12. Les habla sobre cómo pedir información sobre las becas, cómo ordenar que las calificaciones se manden a otra universidad o colegio. Entonces, ahí les puse el enlace en el chat, pero también ¿cómo se dice? En la Google Classroom se puede decir que en el salón de Google de la clase del 2021, la señora Cook pone cuando nosotros recibimos informaciones de becas, ella o yo ponemos información de las becas ahí y es mucha información útil que pueden encontrar se puede decir que en ese salón virtual. Entonces, si tiene cualquier pregunta, puede hablar con la señora Brandt, puedes hablar con la señorita Cook o conmigo sobre preguntas que tengan sobre becas y con mucho gusto les ayudamos, les apoyamos, estamos aquí para apoyarlos.
Ok. También aquí está el sitio de la Fundación de CBC de nuestra beca. Si tienen preguntas o necesitan ayuda para llenar esta, por favor, mándenme correo electrónico. Podemos hacer una cita sobre Zoom para que les ayude a llenar la aplicación de Fafsa, WASFA o aplicación del colegio. Ok. Entonces, por último, el jueves, octubre 15, vamos a tener una junta de Zoom otra vez para ayudarles a que llenen la aplicación de Fafsa o WASFA. Va a ser de 5 a 7, octubre 15, y va a ser un jueves. Y sí tienen que registrarse. So, por favor, ahorita por el chat les voy a poner el sitio donde pueden ir para registrarse para este día. Lo voy a poner ahorita. Okay. Ok, aquí está. Ok. Y si también necesitan más información, aquí está el correo electrónico y también les voy a dar el mío para que me puedan preguntar o si necesitan ayuda. Y creo que eso es todo. Un momento. Oh, ok. También aquí tenemos el calendario de eventos de CBC. Si no pueden venir el jueves, el octubre 15, también vamos a tener otros días durante los próximos meses que vamos a poder ayudarles para llenar su Fafsa o WASFA. So no piensen que tiene que ser ese día. Podemos hacer una junta o vamos a tener más eventos donde podemos ayudarles con esto. Ok, y es todo. ¿Tienen preguntas? Si tienen preguntas, por favor, pueden ponerlas sobre el chat o pueden preguntar ahorita. Aquí también voy a poner mi correo electrónico por si tienen más preguntas, si no no pueden pensar en ellas ahorita, aquí se las voy a poner.